morning, everyone. My name is Weiwei Geng, and I'm the executive producer of Kabam. So today I'm going to talk about how to build durable mobile franchises in a hit-driven business. So before I jump into the topic, I'd like to spend some time introducing the company as well as my role at Kabam. So Kabam is a global leading mobile game company, and we have four over $100 million franchise games in our portfolio. And all our games are localized into 16 different languages, and we publish them in over 100 different countries. So to support that business, we have offices around the globe. So with headquarters in San Francisco, we have game studios in Vancouver, San Francisco, and Beijing, China. And we also have operation centers set up in Austin, Europe, and Seoul, Korea. So the entire company has over 700 employees, and myself work out of Kabam Beijing office. So I joined Kabam for a little longer than 2 years, and for that past 2 years, I've been managing two of the biggest franchise games inside Kabam. So one is Camelot, Battle for the North, and the other is Hobbit, Kingdoms of Middle-earth. So both games have grossed over $100 million over their lifetime. And in fact, Camelot was the #1 top-grossing iPhone app in 2012, which was the same year that the title was launched. And Hobbit also reached a $100 million revenue mark within the same year of the title launch. And last December, together with the second movie, Desolation of the Smog, we've successfully relaunched the title with a big new release. So far, I think I've mentioned the term franchise game for a couple of times, but what exactly is a franchise game, especially in free-to-play business? So when people talk about franchise games, they tend to think about Call of Duty series, FIFA series, or NBA series. But it doesn't really make sense for free-to-play titles to have a sequel every year or even every other year. So how do we understand the concept of franchise game in a free-to-play setting? I'd like to use one analogy here today to help explain that concept. So inside Kabam, we'd like to use TV show industry as the closest analogy to free-to-play. If you look at all these shows, and they all started with one or two or a couple early episodes as a pilot program, and after it's well received, they all quickly turn themselves into multi-episodes and multi-season TV show franchises. And some of the shows, their lifespan can be longer than 10 years. And I still remember back in 2007, and I was flying from Toronto to Shanghai, and on the plane I was watching the early episodes of The Big Bang Theory, and I was laughing my head off. And now, after 7 years, the 7th season is now being broadcasted on CBS. And I'm pretty sure this franchise can pass its 10-year mark as well, based on the current popularity. So to apply that onto free-to-play, we're also looking at similar product evolution. We're looking at multi-year lifespan, starting with something that's relatively smaller, and we want to grow the fan base and community year over year. So with that in mind, the question remains, how do we build one? How do we build a durable free-to-play mobile franchise game? And the analogy here that I want to give you is a chair. And I'm going to talk about how to build 4 durable legs for your chair. Look at all these, let's go through all the legs. So the first leg is new content releases, and the second leg is stable and evolving technology. Third one, fun and engaging live operations. Fourth leg is healthy community management. So I'm going to go through each legs and explain what they are, and I'll just use examples that we did in Kingdoms of Camelot and Hobbit to demonstrate the importance of these legs and showcase some of the projects that we did in both games. So first one, new content. If you look at TV show industry that I use it as the analogy, they would have new episodes and new seasons, and usually with those new seasons and new episodes, they would push out new characters and usually new conflicts and twists and new development into the story. But what about games? We all know for games, we need new content to keep our players entertained. But the key thing here is not just to push out content, but figure out the right cadence of content releases. If you do it too soon, too fast, your players will actually get burnt out. But if you actually do it too slow and too late, your players get bored and they might quit playing the game. So you want to make sure when you release your content, your players are ready for it. And depending on different goals and scope of the content, we could be talking about new content releases, new expansion packs, and new gameplay systems. So let's look at some of the examples. So in Kingdoms Camelot, if you play the game, it's a city, it's empire building game. So we have the city building aspect as part of the core loop. And when we release a new city, we don't just push it out. We actually go to the player data and then see how far they've built up all their previous cities. Because when we do release the city, players will actually say, oh, wow, I just needed one city. This city just came just in time. So that way we can make sure this piece of content can deliver the maximum impact. On the other hand, in Hobbit, when we released the new heroes, Bjorn, the skin changer, and Tariel, the female elf warrior, we didn't just push them out. We actually look at the community as they were watching the second movie's trailers and previews, and we know they saw what's coming in the second movie, and they also wanted it in the game. So we pushed them together with the second movie expansion pack, not before, not after. So together, we use qualitative methods and quantitative methods to make sure, depending on different situations, to make sure all our releases are in the right time. Next, the expansion packs. The nature of these systems are, in general, deeper, more complicated, and larger. But if you do it right, players are more engaged in these systems, and they can spend more time and more fun with the system. So for example, we built gear system for Hobbits, where we allow players to equip their heroes with swords, shields, cloaks, and even rings. So because the close tie with the lore, players actually felt emotional attached to these contents in the system. And same thing for Knights of the Round Table. If you're a Camelot fan and you know all these Round Table Knights of Sir Lancelot and Sir Kay are going to be released in the game, chances are you'll want to chase after them after the release is out. And evergreen system is very interesting because you want to make sure the replayability is great in these systems. You want to make sure every time players come back to the game and then play these systems, they won't get bored and they will have a new experience every single time. So we built the campaign story system in both games, and that was a big success because every time players come back, they can actually play the story mode in different game modes and have fun with them. And also we found mini games make very good candidates for evergreen system as well. Next one is technology, stable and evolving. Stable, obvious, right? You want to make sure your server is available all the time. You want to fix all your bugs, and you don't want your game to crash. And when people try to hack into your game, it's only going to do damage to your game. So all these things will actually contribute to the ultimate player experience. And we all know the better the player experience is, the more willing they are to continue paying and playing in your game. Evolving is tricky because I was using TV industry and I said we wanted to shoot for multi-year lifespan, but we all know how fast technologies evolve over time. So we could be looking at platform, operating system evolution, hardware evolution, compatibility, and the game itself, the package could have evolved over time as you put more and more content into the package. The way you handle memory, the way you handle game asset management could also change. And last but not least, never underestimate the importance of partner SDK integration. So a couple of example projects that we did, cellular data download size limit from Apple changed from 30 megs to 50 to 100, and we also had to switch our over-the-air asset management from time back and forth as well. And Retina, when first Retina came out, we wanted to upgrade our player experience for some of our high-end device owners. And we had to redraw some of the art assets, we had to redesign the UI layouts, and then we had to change the way that we compress our art assets. And that project actually led to the need for the third project, which was the performance change versus hardware requirements. So back when we were building for Kingdoms Camelot, we were shooting for iPhone 4 as the target platform, and 4S was considered high-end because the extra computing power and memory. And now, 2 years later, iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S were actually considered low-end devices for us, but players were still paying on those devices and they were still playing, so we couldn't really drop them. So we had to develop this solution to segment different devices and deliver different user experience to make sure all our games were accessible on different hardware setup. So we talked about content, we talked about technology. Now let's talk about live operations. So people say live operations is promotions and sales. I think it's true, but limited. So to me, live operations can be perceived as new content releases by the community. And in fact, whenever we have new content releases, we want to make sure they go hand in hand with live operations. We want to make sure we have a solid release plan and live operation plan for the new content, and the players are excited about these new contents, and they are well educated on how these content works. And of course, we will run events, promotions, and retention events. And when we see players left the game for a while, we will actually try to use email or push notifications to win them back. So I'm going to use another analogy here to explain the relationship between live operations and the game. A stadium. So imagine you build this game, which is this giant stadium that you built, and all the small meta games and the small loops that your players can have fun on a daily basis are all the facilities that you built in the stadium. And when you dump a bunch of users inside the game or the stadium, they can go ahead and have fun with all different facilities on their own, which is great. But the goal for live operations is to organize an Olympic event in the stadium. Speaking of Olympic events, we actually ran Olympic events in Kingdoms Camelot in 2012 when the London event was happening. So what we did was we designed all the events to match all the Summer Olympic sports. So for example, a 100-meter dash would be to see players who can finish upgrading their buildings to level 10 fastest. And high jump would be for the players who can accumulate the highest troop number in the next 24 hours. And it was well received because to the players, those were new content releases, not just events. And also attached, we have two infographics for in the Kingdoms Camelot and Hobbit to explain the new system and the new releases. We want to make sure people can visually see what's going on and what's coming out in the new releases, and they don't get confused when large system and complicated system come out. Last, community management. This one is probably the most important one, because in the end, we're building games for our players, for the community, not for ourselves. We could be looking at a bunch of things. You want to make sure your VIP issues and problems are getting fixed fast, and you want to appreciate your players and community for their support. You want to make sure your community sentiment is always positive. And last two bullet points, cheating and fraudulent payments, they can actually do heavy damage to our community because the game will actually be perceived as unfair if that happens. So two quick example projects. In Hobbit, we actually designed this Hobbit player appreciation events, which happened in Hobbit month, which was an actual festival in the Hobbit universe on the Hobbit calendar. What we did was during that month, if you keep logging in every day during that month, at the end of it, you actually get a large quantity of in-game currency. And that was quite successful because players think we appreciate them, we want to give back. And because it was tied to the lore of the universe, players thought it was actually pretty fun. And next one was related to the fraudulent payments. After about a year, we launched Kingdoms Camelot and Hobbit. We started seeing this third-party vendor sites. They offer cheaper in-game currencies to our players with fake credit cards. So aside from all the chargebacks from Apple and Google, players started to blame the game for being the reason why these fake credit cards can be accepted, even though it has nothing to do with us. We don't really control the payment side. It's actually Apple and Google's fault. Well, not their fault, but it's under their control. But in the end, we had to allocate time and resource to develop this algorithm and solution to prevent these fraudulent payments, which has absolutely nothing to do with the game itself or the gameplay, but we did it for the community. So to summarize, we talk about content, technology, live operations, and community. And content and live ops, they sort of go hand in hand with each other, as I've described. Live ops, because they're more customer facing, so they will have a more direct impact on the community. And technology, if you don't have very good technology, it's going to impact your content creation. as well as your community will notice it. Or if you want, you can picture the relationship between content, live operation, and community going hand in hand with each other, carrying the business forward, and the technology being the grease to make sure there's no squeaky gear. But regardless how you want to picture the relationship between these four things, the reason why I wanted to use the chair as the analogy is that you may get by with 3 legs, but no less. So when you have all 4 legs really durable and strong, you will feel your business is doing great, the game is doing great. When you have 1 leg missing, you'll probably notice it, but you're probably not sure about it because you'll think, oh, it could be a temporary thing, it's probably a quirk of something else, it could be just a coincidence, so you're not sure. But you will definitely see your game and business struggling if you have 2 legs missing. So the key thing here is to quickly identify which leg is weak and missing, and you want to shift your focus towards fixing and maintaining that leg. But be careful here is that whenever you shift resources, you might have other legs being weakened as well, because all these legs require constant maintenance and attention. So aside from the chair, what other questions we should ask ourselves when we build the franchise games? How do you know the overall business is healthy? What kind of KPIs you want to look at a daily basis to make sure that's the case? On the people side, how do you make sure your team structure evolves over time as your business grows? How do you staff properly as the product lifecycle changes? So for example, early in the product launch, you want to focus probably on stable technology and community, because the game is new, code might not be clean, you might have stability issues, you want to make sure your game is available all the time. And community, you want to foster the core of the early adopters, because those gamers could be staying for as long as the game runs. A little deeper in the product life cycle, you may want to shift your focus a little bit towards live operations, because right now the players are very familiar with your existing content, and it's time to spice it up for them. Create little variations of the existing content. A little more deeper, you want to shift your focus towards new content creation and maybe evolving the technology a little bit, because it's been a while. And what about marketing and user acquisitions? So to have a franchise, you need to keep adding new users and adding new blood to your community and fan base. And lastly, after you've operating the franchise for so long, and you need to ask yourself whether or not finally it is time to make a sequel. So going back to the chair, what I've described all sounded like common sense and pretty straightforward. But trust me, it's easier said than done. In actuality, it's extremely difficult to make sure all 4 legs are durable and strong all the time. So in my past 2 years managing those 2 giant games, I've definitely had moments where all 4 legs were strong and stable and everything felt just great. And I've had moments of doubts and questions when we were missing 1 leg, and we've also struggled and panicked when we were trying to going forward with only 2 legs. But I guess, regardless how difficult and how hard it is, I guess the message that I'm trying to deliver here is, as game developers, we all know how hard and how difficult it is to make a hit in this industry. But if you happen to be able to make one, go the extra mile and turn that into a franchise game, because that's what the business needs, and that's what your user need as well. So I believe that's all about it. And any questions about the chair?
What are some of the horror stories?
Horror stories.
Yes.
Horror stories. Yeah. So struggled with 2 legs. Yeah. So with limited resources, even though Kabam is a big company, for each team, there's always, resources always limited. That's my favorite thing. So we had moments where the community is really upset, and then we lack contents. So what happened was the revenue was declining because all the contents were all exhausted by players, and they feel bored. But they love the game, so they want to see new things. But we didn't have resources to push out new contents fast enough, right? With mobile, you have to make sure you design everything right. You want to build it, you want to QA it. The whole process is take up like 3-4 months to make a meaningful build. And because the way that we respond to the community is not well handled, a lot of their tickets would actually get auto respond. So it's actually, that's the moment where we miss two legs: content and community is not happy. So that's where you see revenue, going down pretty quickly, and that's where you start panicking, and that's where you want to know, oh, how do I shift focus towards those two? But when you shift focus, you're missing the live operations and you're missing the technology part, right? So it's this constant struggle going between those four legs, and then make sure you're only missing one or zero. Yeah, you definitely don't want to go to when you have two legs missing. I've never tried to carry the business forward with only one leg, but I can imagine that's probably the horror story that you don't want to experience.
Can you advise indie game developers, because they have so small resources and cannot handle everything? So, what are the mistakes that definitely should be avoided?
What are the mistakes? Is that the question?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. What are the mistakes? I would say overall, this talk was based on my experience and all my mistakes that I've made in the past 2 years. So the fact that I realized there are four durable, sort of pillars to the business is the first thing. So make sure you keep that in mind. It's not just content, or it's not just live operations, it's not just players and technology. It's everything. You want to make sure everything is stable. So the one biggest mistake is that we didn't realize, okay, all four things needs to be maintained all the time. So in the beginning, we would actually shift focus towards one thing at a time, right? Let's fix technology for good, and then we can shift our resources to live operations. And once that's good, let's shift focus to content. And then that's actually wrong, because you want to make sure all four legs are maintained over time and evolve as the time changes. It's kind of hard because we as builders, we always want to make sure this thing is done for good. Okay, let's move on to the next project, but it's actually wrong. And if you want to run a franchise game, you definitely have to go back and revisit the situation and review the business cases to make sure all four pillars are strong. Other smaller mistakes, they're countless. One thing that I talked about is we didn't push out enough content fast for King's Camelot. We're always lagging behind. So right now, we're actually trying to catch up. So that's one mistake. So yeah, I guess overall the message is never lag behind. You want to stay ahead of the game.
Weiwei, I have a question. How big
Sure.
is your community management team?
How big is the community management team?
For these two titles?
Oh, wow. We actually have a centralized community management team.
Out of San Francisco?
Yeah, out in San Francisco and in Austin as well.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole company shares one community management team, but each team would have like one dedicated community person to help coordinate everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how important is the international aspect of it? I mean, do you do a lot of localized community management, or it's mostly in English?
Yes. That's why we have EU office and Seoul office in Korea. We're trying to set up offices in China as well to support Asia. But yes, Europe, with all the different languages and culture, we had to handle them separately. So we do have the EU office was solely dedicated to localize the live operation and community management aspect of it, and Seoul as well, because players there, they tend to make phone calls versus writing tickets, right? So things are a little bit different. Yeah.
Cool. Any other last questions for Weiwei? We have one over here.
Hi, going back to the community management question.
Yeah, sure. Community management.
How do you constantly get new people to know about your game?
How do I what?
How do you get new people to know about
How do
your
I
game?
get new people into the game?
Yeah, and also, how do you get eyeballs on the game when you first started?
Yeah, this is more of a discovery and user acquisition sort of question. So, I mean, I believe there's a lot of talks in Casual Connect talking about getting new users. So for Kingdoms Camelot, I think it's a franchise that was on Facebook. So the lore itself is one attractive thing. So whenever you put your ads out there, players will see it, and if they feel a reticence with the brand, they'll actually click on the ad. On the other hand, Hobbit, because it's such a giant IP, whenever people see Gandalf, they see Sauron, they're like, oh wow, I recognize this guy. I want to try this game. But now, with free play, after they click the ads, the conversion starts right from there, right? You want to optimize every single funnel, every single step in your funnel to make sure they stay in the game, and they convert, and they stay with the game for as long as the game runs. But in the end, personally, I believe in word of mouth. So if you have a very good game, polished, fun, engaging, people will talk about it. So you will see the organic ratio towards paid traffic goes north when you have a very good game. So yeah, so I think that's more of a marketing question and user acquisition. So if you're in the States, you will probably notice for Hobbit, we actually started experimenting with TV campaigns. So we show ads on TV, not just on the internet. That's just one experiment to see this integrated marketing, not just limited to online ads or cell phone ads. We also want to go to the traditional media to test out the channels over there. Okay? Yeah, if you guys have more questions, come
You'll
find
be around,
me.
right?
Okay.
Today?
Yeah, I'll be around here.
Perfect. Thank you so
Okay,
much,
thank
Weiwei.
you.
Let's give him an applause.